Alright, since Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the final film for Phase 4, I think this is a pretty good time to rank all of the movies that have come out for Phase 4, and let's start off with number 7. I don't think Black Widow is a horrible MCU movie, I just think that it's a mid one, and honestly, it felt like a movie that should have came out 5-10 years ago, and I'm like the 1 millionth YouTube channel that has said that. And even though this movie is supposed to be about Natasha, I honestly cared more about Yelena, and it felt like that was intentional because it seemed like they were just trying to, preview her for Hawkeye. I really don't have much to say about this one. I've made fun of it a lot, and I think this is Taika Waititi's worst movie in my opinion. It's not even close to Ragnarok, and I am not excited for Thor 5.
Why does the sun go on shining?
I'm gonna say this right now. I liked Eternals much more than most people, and I don't think it's as horrible as everyone else was saying it was at the time. And I think the biggest problem that Eternals had was that even though it was 2.5 hours, that still wasn't enough. They were still trying to dump way too much information at the audience, and I think this movie could have been a TV series for multiple seasons to really flesh out the characters. I thought for what the actors had to work with, I thought that they were pretty good for what they had, but I do think that, Chloe Zhao wasn't really utilized to her best advantages, and it didn't really feel like a Chloe Zhao movie. It just felt like a Marvel movie. I think an actor who was on Eternal said that they're already working on a second one. I'd like to see Chloe Zhao come back, but if they do bring her back, then hopefully they, really utilize her a bit more. Kind of like how they did with Sam Raimi and Doctor Strange. It was still a, Marvel movie, but you could tell that Sam Raimi definitely had some influence over it. This is probably the ranking that will probably have a bunch of people's eyebrows raised right now, but I'll explain myself. I thought the first half of Shang-Chi was some of the best, first half that I've ever seen from a Marvel movie. But where the movie loses me is, I think this is just a me thing, but the second act just did not work for me. And then you had the fact that it had a third act CGI battle that, Marvel fans have seen way too many times, and I've seen it way too many times to care. But overall, I think it's a decent movie, but compared to the next three, it just doesn't hit me on that level. Alright, this is where my bias comes into play. I'm a big Sam Raimi fan. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. So, he hadn't, directed anything in 10 years, at least on the big scale. And for him to come back like he had never left. Also, I think this is probably the best shot MCU movie. It actually has life to its camera work, and it's not stale and dead like other Marvel movies seem to be. And as much as I love this movie's camera work, the reason why it's not number 1 or even number 2 is because it really doesn't have a story. I'm not the only person that feels this way, but Doctor Strange doesn't have a story in this movie. He doesn't have an arc. It's not really about him. I think Wanda has way more of a, cool story to tell, and she's on this rampage to get her kids back. That could have just been a movie on its own. And it felt like Doctor Strange wasn't even the second part. He felt like the third part in his own movie. I'm not going to say too much about this movie. If you want to hear my thoughts on Black Panther 2, I have a review on my channel. But anyways, the fact that this movie even came out with all the chaos happening with Chadwick Boseman's death and Letitia Wright's situation, it's amazing that this movie even came out. But this movie was actually surprisingly good, and I think this is probably this is probably my favorite Marvel story that has come out, honestly, aside from the next movie. And I think that the action was some of the best that Marvel has had, and Shang-Chi had great action as well. I forgot to mention that. And I think that Black Panther, even though I don't know whether or not it's better than the first one, I think that this is a really good movie, and I think that I'll be watching it again once it hits streaming. There's not much else for me to say about No Way Home. I understand that, the movie isn't necessarily the best when you really think about it, but just the experience of seeing No Way Home and seeing my personal favorite Spider-Man of all time, Tobey Maguire, come back to the screen again, even seeing Andrew Garfield show what could have been if he had a better director and better writers. Because honestly, although I love Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield stole the entire movie for me. And this movie also proved that Tom Holland is actually a worthy Spider-Man. Although I've always liked Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I know a lot of people did not like his Spider-Man, especially the first two. I liked the first Spider-Man movie that he had, and the second one was fine. It was a fun summer movie, but this movie showed that Tom Holland is going to be a very great Spider-Man for years to come. And that is my Phase 4 movie ranking. Overall, I think the movies for Phase 4 have been either average to great, or there's only been about one great movie and a bunch of decent ones and a couple of mediocre ones. But we'll see what happens with Phase 5. I think the future of Marvel is looking pretty good right now. It's just going to come down to execution. This is my list. Do you like my list? Do you disagree? What's your list? Let me know in the comments. And those are my thoughts on that.